talk to us about wearable tech.
That was really good timing, thank you. Mouthful of beer. Okay, hi everybody. Where do you start when we talk about wearable tech, which is clearly one of the most contemporary, most modern, certainly most up-to-date, certainly with the release of Wearable recently, most talked about areas of the technical world. You start in 1352 with a guy called Hubert de Vos. This painting of Hubert de Vos, it's a painting by a guy called Tommaso di Madonna. And this for me, bar clothes, is the first pictorial example of wearable technology. Because this is the first time anybody was ever painted wearing a pair of glasses. I think this is important because actually it starts to define why we want to engage with wearable technology. Hubert de Vos wanted to wear glasses because he couldn't read the Bible properly. He was looking to enrich his life by using a piece of technology so that he could consume media more accurately. He was effectively correcting a flaw in his own DNA-based operating system. Pretty much every other piece of wearable technology that we have ever embraced since that point in time has been trying to do those two things. Correcting a flaw in our DNA-based operating systems and enriching our lives by making us able to consume the world in a more compelling way. But wearable tech is super overhyped, and I'm not telling you this, Gartner are telling you this. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Gartner. They basically categorise the technical world for us. This is a thing that they produce every year. This is from 2014, because they haven't produced the 2015 one yet. It's called the hype cycle. It tells you how hyped things are, whether they're overhyped or not. So basically, along the line at the bottom is a timeline that says, this is stuff that gets exciting. The peak of inflated expectations, this is when we're getting really, really excited about it. And then, because there's a very natural lag in humanity, we can imagine things quicker than we can engineer them. So our imagination is at its height in the peak of inflated expectations. Then we get a lag, where we head into the trough of disillusionment, which is the bit that we get to when we can't make stuff as quickly as our imagination tells us we want to make stuff. And then we progress through to the point in time when we kind of catch up with our engineering. Wearable user interfaces is at the peak of inflated expectations, so it's cascading downhill, it's going to get real boring real quick. Except that's not true. Because it's not necessarily true that this is overhyped, because there are so many other parts of the hype cycle which detail really important factors in our use as human beings of wearable tech. So, heading uphill already, NFC is a really important piece of wearable technology implementation, because it's the bit that allows the things that you wear to talk to others. Things like end-to-end are ahead of the curve. Things like augmented reality, part of wearable technology, are ahead of this curve. There are things that are behind this curve, which are also part of wearable technology, like brain-computer interfaces, quantified cells, and connected home. So I think what we need to take out of this is that while people may get very, very excited, and consequently also say you're heading downhill and it's going to get very boring, the journey to really useful wearable technologies is a long one that we are only just stepping out on. And it's important to recognise that while some big organisations have started to produce really cool pieces of wearable technology, they're not the only ones. So it's not just about watch, HoloLens, Rift, and glass. Also, who at this point in time suddenly decided that nobody uses the as the definitive article anymore? It's like, oh, I've got glass. Yeah, the glass? No. There's a semantic thing in there that I think should be addressed. These are some of the other cool things that people are making at the minute. My personal favourite is the one in the middle, which is called Nixie, which is a drone that's about the size of your watch. You wear on your wrist and literally throw it in the air. Flips out and you can get a drone launched up. That is a cool, cool piece of wearable technology. Scully is for motorcyclists, and it is a piece of tech where you're projecting a head-up display down onto the lens when you're driving. Personally, I think that sounds incredibly dangerous, that you have something projected onto something that you're riding at 70 miles an hour. Ziff is designed to correct your golf swing. So you wear that when you're playing golf, and then on your phone, it also has the exact swings of major professionals, So you can compare your swing to Tiger Woods' swing. Piece at the top is totally in play now and is placed by Barclaycard. It's called BPay. It's a wristband that allows you to pay. Football clubs are starting to brand them. You will get them free with your season ticket, and it will allow you to pay at vendors inside the stadium and get a discount because you're a season ticket holder, and that's how you will pay these things. This is Ringly. Ringly sounds terrible, but I think it's interesting that we're starting to move into the realms of jewellery. So Ringly is a ring that will vibrate when you get any form of text message, phone call, when you get a tweet that's addressed to you, any of your social media activities will be transformed onto your hand. That's also been expanded out to cover things like being able to pay your Oyster card, so that you'll be able to log in with your ring. The stuff in the top, as you look at it, right-hand corner, perhaps the most interesting of all, or sick, depending on which way you look at it. That's called Bondara. You can probably guess from the shape of it what it does and where it goes on the male anatomy. And it is designed to basically look at thrusts per minute and the amount of calories that you're burning at any point in time. Isn't that a work of genius? I guess what we're showing here is that wearable technology can creep into every area of life and is doing so. And it's not just the big sort of marquee stuff like HoloLens that should be getting our attention. We should be looking at the small piece of activity. And it really demonstrates where we're able to find usefulness inside wearables. If none of you've seen the latest HoloLens demos, we'll talk about Glass and the HoloLens for a bit. I think Glass was a failure because it didn't really change much between what you can do on your phone and then wearing a stupid pair of glasses that made you look like a tool. And that's why it kind of failed. It didn't take a step forward enough, and it made you look like a dick. HoloLens makes you look like more of a dick because you're wearing a really big black set of glasses. But the interface is incredible, and I thoroughly commend to all of you to go and have a look at the current. There's one from the Open Code forum that was held in May, so very, very recent. You search for it on Google. The way in which they're now starting to develop the interface through HoloLens, I think, is the future. I won't play it, I can't play it now because it takes about 5 to 10 minutes. But that is where you will basically have any window that you can run on your PC can be displayed virtually into a room. So you can put a video unit and you just literally throw it up onto the wall, press play, you can expand it to any size. You can put calendars up, you can visualise things like weather maps for places that you might go on holiday, and they are in the room with you, distributed around the room where you want them to be. That, for me, as a virtually created environment, is much more compelling than having a little window here. Keep an eye on HoloLens, because I think that interface is the way that the future will begin to play out. I said that I'd talk a little bit about content creation and wearable technology. It's a very, very nascent part of the world, but I think anything that allows you to get a drawing of a dick in a presentation is really worthwhile. This is the kind of stuff that people are doing. This is a branded piece. So Nike did a piece in Japan for the launch of a trainer called Run With Me. It's a piece of wearable technology, so it's a bit like Fitbit. Japanese version of Nike Plus, basically. What they did was they got a guy who was running, and they hooked him up with a load of cameras and clearly rendering technology on maps. And for every like on Facebook that he ran another 10 meters. The guy ended up, he drew trainers all over Japan. He ended up running over 200 miles, I think it was. People really got into torturing this poor soul. But yeah, they rendered up some beautiful pictures. And the last time I said this, I presented this about 4 months ago, said somebody should go out and render a really good big logo across Great Britain. And somebody that really clearly took that on board and went off and did it about three months later. And it was for the poppy appeal. And they rendered a map of a giant poppy across one. The guy in the middle went out and rode 65 miles to draw a turkey to say to his fellow Americans, hey, it's Thanksgiving Day. I love you guys, let's have turkeys and let's put him in a hat. The other guy, Brett Hobley, actually rendered up his proposal to his fiancée via Strava, which I thought was a really nice piece of personalisation of how to make a great expression of humanity and make it very public, but also make it very, very deeply personal. So I think this is the start of content creation, or some areas of content creation around wearable technology. This is probably my favourite piece of content from last year. It's a GIF. I mean, GIFs are great. This is a piece that was done by Citibank and the New Yorker, and it's based on where City Bikes, so their version of what now Santander bikes, Barclays bikes, were in Manhattan. So you can kind of see where people are docking them, where they go from day to night. Notice that people sort of go back home in the East Village, etc. I think the interesting bit here, this is just geolocation. But because of the kind of stuff that we're starting to see in terms of the data that's being collected by wearables, you could start to render things like how fast people's heartbeats are going in pieces of content like this. So you could begin to see that as the market begins to drop on Wall Street, all the heartbeats begin to go up around Wall Street. There's a whole load of self-data visualization that's about to start coming through as pieces of content. In terms of making content, the arrival of glass and wearable technologies is really advancing and changing the game. So the guy on the left-hand side is a guy called Tim Pool. Tim Pool works for Vice, and he went and embedded himself in the protests and the change through Arab Spring in Egypt and Tunisia. He then went on to all of the kind of protests in Brazil, and he placed himself inside those protests and filmed it as he was there, providing live commentary, as audio commentary, but also reacting to individual tweets and feedback. So I think this changes the face of journalism, because the audience is starting to tell the journalist where to go, what to film, in order to try and get closer to that piece of news action. The guy on the right hand side, as you look, this is fascinating, begins to start to get into some of the areas where things start to get a bit murky. This guy called Victor Oladipo, who's a fantastic basketball player in the US, played college basketball, and basically Google clearly didn't, but clearly did, gave him a pair of glass to wear in the 3 days up to the draft. So that's the bit where you're going to go pro, you're going to be a millionaire, or you're not. He did, he went number 2, but he basically filmed his entire life, the most important parts of his life, for 3 days and broadcast them as a live stream. Loads of people sort of started to get into it, started to get a great deal of social coverage. The thing that then gets really interesting is that the only people who really didn't like it were the NBA. The NBA got into the green room, so the bit where you're about to go on stage, you're about to get made, you're about to make $10 million a year, they went, take those off. You're in breach of our IP. This draft, and the broadcasters who broadcast it paid a lot of money to broadcast it, you can't do it. And I think that's an interesting part that we're going to have to get to grips with as wearables start to change content creation, and as we start to become citizen journalists in high definition, visually high definition. Because we don't understand the rules of journalism as normal consumers. You don't understand libel, you don't understand IP very well. And individual people are going to start getting sued quite quickly for breaches of copyright. And it's something that we, when we're looking after brands and we're starting to implement this kind of activity, are going to have to be very, very conscious of. First people have just started to get sued for using Periscope and broadcasting live footage from football matches. Because it says on the back of your ticket, to every game at the Premiership, you are not allowed to broadcast. Broadcast rights are protected. Sport, as always, and porn kind of lead the way. I'm not going to do the porn bit because that's going to get a bit tasty for Friday lunchtime. But sport tends to lead the way in the adoption of all things broadcast and media. It's going to lead to some very big changes in the way we start to consume sport and the way we start to view sport. Sport's interesting because people want to be like their sporting heroes and want to get closer to their sporting heroes and want to understand their sporting heroes. These guys are the New York Rangers. They started to wear smart technology on their uniforms, as the Americans would call them, during the course of this year. And they're cataloguing things like how much people sweat, what their heart rates are, what their cover on the ice, how quick they're moving, all those sorts of things. I think that's allowing people to get closer to their heroes, allowing you to understand their heroes a little bit better. But what it's also going to do is going to change the way we think about things like betting. So the minute you might bet on the score, or when somebody scores, or who scores, you're going to be able to start to bet on things like who had the fastest heart rate, who controlled their heart rate the best, who sweated 2 litres rather than 3 litres over the course of the game. That will begin to change things. Smart technology is starting to get deployed across every sporting field and every game that you can think of. To start to see how we're getting closer to our heroes, to our sporting heroes, just one video that I've put in today. This is a piece from Foxtel in Australia. If I play it, it's pretty obvious what it is. You'll be able to get to grips with it pretty quick. Or not. Maybe I won't play that. No. Old school. We got no audio at all. I'm going to voice over this bit. So basically what they did, they started to film and detail AFL players, so Aussie Rules football players, how hard they hit, what their heartbeats are like, and they started to plug that into a app for your phone. They then built a peripheral that was a shirt which had contraction pads in it. So that as you're starting to watch the game and you watch people hitting players on the pitch or running up to take that really important penalty, you can start to feel the heartbeat of the player in real time against your own chest, or start to feel the impact as the guy hit the player that you were plugged into. I think this is a really interesting step that we're going to again get closer to our sporting heroes. I think there's another implication around the amount of data that we will get back from wearables about how we consume sport. So you know, like you go to any kind of gig at the minute and actually everybody's watching it through their mobile phone and they're filming it. I think there's a big danger that we're going to start doing that with our sporting events as well, and we're going to actually sit there and start watching sport through our phones even though we pay 200 quid to sit inside the stadium. Get rid of that. The most significant area of development for wearable tech has been in the areas of health and the quantification of the cell. There's some really interesting aspects of this that are coming to play in our lives and are real demonstrations of machine-to-machine interaction, so what people call the Internet of Things. It is now entirely technically possible that you will be able to describe a lifestyle statement of what you want to achieve. So, I want to be thinner, I want to be fitter, that your Fitbit will talk to your fridge as you come home and will have monitored your heartbeat and your blood pressure, and that your fridge will then place the order to Tesco's to make sure that you're consuming the right food so that you are then able to achieve the lifestyle goal that you set for yourself. People are starting to quantify this internet of themselves very, very deeply. And I think that the things that we're going to start to see in terms of clothing and the way that wearable technology is about to rocket, because it was last month, 3 different universities, University of Lisbon, University of Pennsylvania, and bizarrely the University of Exeter, actually started to graft graphene onto polymers that we would make our clothes out of. So currently, the way that wearables have worked is that we have added them to our clothes. You're going to be able to run electrical currents through the clothes themselves now, and be able to take feedback out of the clothing. So so that we won't need to rely upon diodes anymore that are providing that connection. The actual clothing itself will begin to be intelligent, so you're really going to get to a point where you genuinely have smart clothing that might render out visually how you're feeling emotionally, how your heart is reacting, what your emotional state is. And if we think that sounds ridiculous, I certainly went raving in the 1990s, and people used to wear those body glove things, which showed how hot you were and changed colour depending upon the heat. Entirely possible that people will start to wear these things that externalise their inner self, and as they're quantifying themselves, they're displaying it to other people. I think some of this is slightly freaky. This guy is a guy called Chris Dancy. I can't believe that this is the guy who's taken it too far. He currently runs around 700 systems on his person, his home, and his dogs. This is also Chris Dancy. So this is actually what Chris Dancy's life looks like from all of those 700 different systems that he's running on himself. These are the data sets that are coming out of it. There's some really interesting things that he's doing to himself that I think probably begin to line up upon what we will experience in the next 10 years' time that make him look like a dick now, but are going to come into our real lives. So, for example, his systems begin to monitor how well he slept. They will adjust the lighting depending upon how well he slept, and therefore its interpretation of what his mood will be, so that when he wakes up, the lighting either lifts slowly or comes on very brightly. It will choose his Spotify playlist and start to pump out different choices of music as he awakes to try and adjust his mood. He also, when we all meet people for business, you could probably go to LinkedIn to go and check their LinkedIn profile to see who they are, where they've been, what they do. He plugs into his own data systems to see how he felt when he met them the first time and how he felt when he met them the last time, based upon what his body was telling him. I think that's something that could be a bit of a step too far, and I'm not sure I want to know how I felt when some of the people that I've met through business. I think there's a big question here, is all this data application and quantification of Chris Dancy's self improving and enriching his life? Or is it starting to make him a slave to the data that his body is producing? I'm kind of inclined to think it's the latter. However, he did manage to lose 140 pounds, it's 10 stone, just through realising what he was eating, what effect it was having on his body, and how starting to lose weight was changing his heart rate, his blood pressure, etc. We kind of started off with the eyes, talking about how you change vision in order to read the Bible. This is where stuff starts to get really freaky, so this is the next generation stuff that's going to come in. This piece in the bottom left is a collaboration between Google and Novartis, who are a medical company, so it's a contact lens, and it monitors the levels of glucose in your tears. So making sure that it's still wet on your eye. And it's for diabetic sufferers. So they can monitor them back to Novartis so they can tell them when they need to up or change their medication. Novartis and Google are also working on a contact lens that will improve human vision. So not adjusting it like a pair of glasses, but like on your mobile where you can do a digital zoom, you will be able to digitally zoom your own vision. So you basically full-on Terminator shit. And you think this is far away? It's like, no, this is like real now. It's just it's in med factories and med prototypes. It's not been rolled out. That begins to then lead you on to the stuff in the top right, which is an interface by Innovage called iOptic. As I was talking about HoloLens and the way that HoloLens begins to render up its interface with the real world, they're starting to do that via contact lenses. Really, really interesting implications for us as marketers. Basically, as all of us, and there's probably about 80 people sat in this room, if you've all got these in, as you walk down the street, with all of the different feedback data that's coming back as signals into marketers, you'll be able to render different experiences of the high street. So they will get individual personalised offers as they're walking down the high street. You might be able to work out when the last time you ate was, start to say, hey, look, there's McDonald's here. Go in, go and grab a burger. It might mean that we don't actually have to have stores that have basic retail footprints anymore. You can get shared stores where some people go in to go to a bank, some people go in to go and, I don't know, get photographs developed or something. It will be different, it will make a big change on the high street because everybody will experience the high street in a different way. This stuff, you can tell it's patent sketch because they make them really raw. This is from 2012, so it's already several years old. It's a patent by Nokia for intelligent ink tattooing. So that you'll put intelligent ink tattoos onto your body and your body will ring when you receive a phone call. If you start to take that a little step further and you start to get into intelligent inks, again, which are already in play, because all inks are made out of metals for their colouring, start to get to a point where you can actually tattoo screens onto your body and interact with your body as a kind of keyboard or indeed, amazingly, as a visual screen. The delivery of that technology is within the next decade. That stuff freaks the hell out of me. I think that's just very, very crazy and like living in the future and it's totally science fiction. There are some quite big implications for me around wearable technology and the kind of data that it develops in particular, and this is really pertinent for us as marketers. We're starting to get to the point, particularly with overlays, visual overlays and things like contact lenses, where we're probably going to know what somebody wants to buy and probably why they want to buy it before they realise that for themselves. It's not a very big step away. I think that's massive, massive responsibility for marketers to take on board. The kind of levels of data that we might know about individuals, and if none of you have done it, to scare yourselves about the simplicity, how much data people are collecting. If you simply go into the settings on your iPhone and start to look at the visualization of where you've been and how long you were in a place, have any of you done that? I can see a few of the digital guys nodding their heads. It scares the hell out of you. I mean, like, Apple know where you've been and for how long. It basically means my missus can take my phone and see when I've been in the pub when I said I wasn't, and it's that bit's uncool. So there's for me, there's already gross invasions of privacy happening right now. And because we can't be bothered to read the T's and C's, and because you have to opt out of so much good stuff, you're giving away thousands and thousands of pounds worth of your own data already. And that's simply going to increase the more pieces of technology you add to your bodies. So actually, there's another bit that goes in with that. People are starting to embed wetware into themselves. So they're actually starting to put it's not clothes and it's not wearable, it's inside them. The smallest NFC chips are about the size, the end of the lead on a pencil. It's getting to the point where you can definitely inject yourself with an NFC chip without causing any kind of physical harm to yourself. And there's a guy down in Australia called Matt something, who's he's put a little NFC chip into the web of his hand, and he's basically running the systems on his iPhone off this NFC chip. So he can turn the lights on and off in his house with his hand. He can basically make calls from his hand. Pretty strange, if you ask me. But this bit where people are starting to embed technology into their own bodies is starting to have some repercussions. There are people who are starting to suffer distinct mental problems because of the way that they're beginning to visualize themselves, and there are people who are suffering from physical problems because nobody's really started to understand what the magnetic fields are doing to people once they start to put hardcore electronics inside their bodies. That's pretty much it. If any of your clients ever ask you what they should do as a wearable strategy, thanks to Phil Grimmett, if he's still here, he put me onto this one. This site was built by a guy called Dan O'Donnell. It's called What the Fuck Is My Wearable Strategy, and it will create you a wearable strategy for your clients with every click. You need no more. Thank you very much.